So we have encountered at least one other work that's a seafaring text that does some kind of strange mapping, namely the Odyssey. So in some way, this is a new departure for a global imagination, first Portuguese national literature, but it's also a return to Homer in some way.
Very programmatically. To Homer, as particularly seen through probably Virgil also, the opening line of the epic is rewriting the opening line of Virgil's Aeneid, the arms and the man. Instead of arms and the man, it's arms and the heroes in the plural. It's going to be a collective enterprise now, not just one man, but very much like Virgil rewriting the two Homeric epics.
Right. So there's a whole series of rewritings, and this is the most recent one. Clearly for a writer who isn't looking back at a great national literature tradition in Portuguese, it must be part of an attempt to create kind of literary prestige to emulate an ancient writer like Homer and Virgil.
That's right. And I think at his time, it's strategic that it goes back more to Homer than to Virgil, because Virgil was the great master of the later epics in the Romance tradition. And HARMWLXX is sort of, his rivals are really especially the Italian epic writers who are very much in Virgil's line. So he's doing an end run back around them, not unlike Vasco da Gama doing an end round around Africa, yes. You could say.
But you know, so it's interesting. So we are saying how much HARMWLXX admired Homer, how he goes back to Homer rather than Virgil. Let's see how he's treating the people he really admires. This is from Canto 5, and he's talking about these great explorations they are embarking on. Did you think, O king, the world contained men who would tackle such a journey? Do you imagine that Aeneas and subtle Ulysses ever ventured so far? Did either of them dare to embark on actual oceans? For all the poetry written about them, did they see a fraction of what I know through strategy and action? This doesn't just sound to me like admiration. I think there's quite a bit of rivalry in that line too. Rivalry at least in two ways. On the one hand, who knows where Homer ever went? If he was blind, as the tradition has it, he probably didn't run around even in the Mediterranean. And even if he did, he would never get as far as HARMWLXX did.
Even if there was a Homer, you could say you have a collective author about one man. In the Greek case, here you have one great poet about a collective process. He is seeing himself as inverting, mirroring Homer, both drawing on him and rivaling him, much as, in fact, it's quite clear from various respects, and we can look at some maps, we'll do a map session later, that a number of map makers saw the Indian Ocean as a mirror image of the Mediterranean. So the Indian Ocean will be his own place of the prime center of the Homeric adventure he's going to undertake.
And it's interesting that in Homer's case, different people have tried to reconstruct Ulysses' actual route and where these fantasy encounters really took place. We can try to imagine that Scylla and Charybdis is between Sicily and mainland Italy and so on and so forth, but we don't know. We have to go by various sort of geographical markers, mythologies about different places, and so on and so forth. And it seems that this difficulty we had with Homer in mapping the literary geography onto actual geography is precisely what HARMWLXX is actually criticizing Homer for. Just a few stanzas after the one I just read, where he already questions whether they actually went to actual oceans, he emphasizes the kind of fantastic element of Homer and contrasts that to the real world exploration and experience that he encodes in this text. So still Canto 5, he says quite dismissively, "Let them fantasize of winds leaping from wineskins and of amorous calypsos, harpies who foul their own banquets, pilgrimages to the underworld. However they polish and decorate with metaphor such empty fables, my own tale in its naked purity outdoes all boasting and hyperbole."
As he boasts.
As he boasts, exactly.
Hyperbolically claiming to in every respect, Homer.
But it's interesting, he's not saying, I have a more vivid imagination, I have a better way with language. He says, I have the real.
And he's seen it all. And this is itself, I think, part of the rivalry with Homer, who says in the opening lines that he saw the cities of men and came to know their minds. So this seeing, but you have a blind poet and you have an imaginary hero. Now you have actually, Camões has only blinded one eye, so he actually has a little bit of the Homeric blindness. He loses one of his eyes in battle, actually being out there, but then he sees sharply the other eye. And there's a bunch of passages where he says, you won't believe this, but I saw this water spout in the middle of the ocean. Describes with great, really scientific accuracy how a little cyclonic water spout happens in mid-ocean, which they don't have in the peaceful Mediterranean or the nearby Atlantic, but there in these very turbulent South Atlantic seas, they see these things. He says, you wouldn't believe it, but you had to see it, or the lightning fire sort of hitting on the head of the mast, all of that things. So that there's a kind of great excitement and pride about his ability to really bring the world into an epic text that he says has never happened before.